been a bit of a dizzying week here in Washington. Minimum wage is apparently off the table. Further means testing relief checks apparently on the table. What does it all mean for the Biden administration and potentially Democrats in the midterms? Joining me now to discuss the implications of all of this is activist, author, and former Democratic presidential candidate, great friend of the show, Marianne Williamson. And so great to see you, Marianne.
Always great to see you. Thank you, Crystal.
So there have been a few moves here that have been, I think, head-scratching would be the most charitable way I could possibly put it. You had the, expenditure of a lot of political capital trying to get Neera Tanden over the finish line at the same time that they just completely roll over and capitulate without even putting any effort in on the minimum wage. Now we've just gotten the news that on the relief checks that they'd already cut back from 2,000 to 1,400, now 17 million fewer Americans are going to receive those checks. What do you make of all of these developments?
Well, it's disappointing, of course, not shocking. And I think that the American people are waking up to what the centrist Democrats stand for. There's a lot in the COVID relief bill that we should be happy about. It rescues people, but it's like rescuing people who are drowning in the center of the ocean, but you put them back on the shore and they're still living as little more than serfs in their own land. I don't understand why we're asking low and medium wage workers to sacrifice so much, but we're not asking Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos to sacrifice at all. Why are we not talking about a wealth tax? Why are we not talking about an estate tax? All of the burden is being placed on the poor. And that's a larger picture than the details. There's a lot of talk about the details in this COVID bill, and a lot of the details are to be applauded, whether it has to do with emergency nutritional care for children or child care or expanded unemployment benefits or helping with transportation and state and local governments. All of that's very good. But the real devil here is not in the details. It's in the big picture. The big picture is that we have transitioned to a rigged economy, to an economy in which still a very few people are able to win. And this does nothing. And this is what centrist Democrats do. They do not challenge the underlying forces that make the continuation of trajectories of great suffering inevitable for millions and millions and millions of people.
Yeah. And in fact, the centrists that we refer to on a lot of their positions, they're actually on the fringe, right? $15 minimum wage is the mainstream moderate centrist position if you're talking about the population at large. But I guess I'd love to know what your answer is for why we're not talking about a wealth tax, why we're not talking about, we had Joe Biden come in, he hung a portrait of FDR in a prominent position in the Oval Office. There was some floating of, he really gets the moment. His aides were linking that to the media in advance of him being inaugurated. Why aren't we hearing talk about those more fundamental issues and that big picture context that you're referring to?
Well, I was very excited at first when I saw that picture of FDR, but at this point, I think it's quite cynical. FDR talked about the economic royalists. The economic royalists are the Jeff Bezoses of today, the 640 some odd billionaires, the billionaire class that has been created by these essentially unjust economic policies over the last 40 years. Policies that the Republicans began, the trajectory to income inequality so extreme that the Republicans began, but that the Democrats did not stop. So now you can put a picture of FDR up above the mantle and talk about how you want to be so FDR-like, but FDR would call this what it is, and he would push back against the economic royalists, and he would, in his words, welcome their hatred. So when you say, why aren't they doing it? They're not doing it because of who they serve. They serve more the short-term profit maximization of these huge corporate interests than they do the actual will of the American people and the safety and the health and the well-being of the American people. How they expect to win in 2022 this way, I cannot imagine. Because people understand what's being done. The human element gets lost in this. The 900,000 people who have been hoping that the minimum wage hike would occur because it would literally lift them out of poverty. We're talking about people who have spent the last few weeks and months thinking, well, if the wage hike happens, if the minimum wage hike occurs, maybe I could pay for this apartment. Maybe I could stay for in this apartment. Maybe I could have enough food to feed my kids. So you can put a picture of FDR over your mantle all you want, Mr. President, but I think millions of Americans see this for the very cynical move that it is turning out to be.
And Marianne, you know what they'll run on? They'll say, okay, yeah, you're disappointed in us. But the GOP is worse. They didn't vote for the relief bill at all. They didn't want to give you, we gave you $1,400, at least some of you. They didn't want to give you anything at all. They don't support a minimum wage hike whatsoever. We, at least in theory, do. Although if it doesn't happen, what good does in theory ultimately do? But do you think that that will work? Do you think that that will be a potent argument?
No, it is psychologically very unsophisticated. If your father abuses you, you could see the Republicans are like an abusive father, but the Democrats are like the mother who says she's going to help you, but really she doesn't. She gives you milk and cookies to make it better at the end of the evening, but she's not calling the police and she's not leaving the man. And when that child grows up and goes to therapy, couple of decades later, their anger will be at their mother. So the Republicans aren't promising you anything. Their basic attitude is drop dead if you have to. But the Democrats said, elect us and we'll make it better. Elect us and we'll make it better. Elect us and we'll make it better. And so I think that they're going to have an even harder time. The days of it's all Trump's fault are over. The days of it's all Mitch McConnell's fault are over. The Democrats have the House, the Democrats have the Senate, the Democrats have the White House. And I can't imagine, I mean, it's making me cynical, but if I was a minimum wage worker, it would make me angry as hell.
Yeah. And talk about that cynicism. I mean, do you see a path forward?
Yes, completely changing right now, fighting for that minimum wage. This idea of using the parliamentarian is an excuse. It's almost like thinking the American people are stupid. Hubert Humphrey overrode the parliamentarian when he was vice president. Many vice presidents have. There's nothing constitutional about this. To say that you respect the traditions of the Senate, and that's why you won't override the parliamentarian. Respect the needs for food, respect the needs for a home, respect the needs of people who are working 40 hours a week at minimum wage jobs and are so trapped by this unrigged economy. That's what we need to see some respect for. Do I think it will work? No. That's why so many of us, including yourself, are so upset. This is a path to disaster for 2022. And God help us in 2024 if things don't go well in 2022.
Marianne, it's always so great to have your insights. Thank you.
Yours too. Thank you so much.
We'll have more Rising for you later today.